GE 25. 2. 1ch1. 32 Job's companion Bildad is the only Shahite named in the scriptures. Job 2. 11. 8. 1. 18. 1. 25. 1. 42. 9. Shulamite Shulam Middle. The designation for the beautiful country girl who is the principal character of the Song of Solomon 6. 13. Likely this title portrays her as from the city of Shana modern Sulam. Compare 1 Chi 1. 3. Lending support to this view is the fact that the Greek Septuagint Vatican manuscript No. 1209 calls the girl the Shunammite. Also, the ecclesiastical writer Eusebius referred to Shunem as Shulam. 1 Amasticon, 158, 11. Shumatites Shumath Middle.ites. One of the families of Kiriath Jearim, likely descendants of Judah through Caleb and Shobal. 1ch2. 19, 50, 52, 53. Shunammite Shunam Middle. Of belonging to Shunam. An inhabitant of Shunam. Apishag, the nurse of David in his old age, is called a Shunammite. 1 Chi 1. 3, 4, 15. 2. 17, 21, 22. See Abishag. A prominent woman of Shunem who showed hospitality to the prophet Elisha, regularly offering him food and lodging, is left unnamed. For her kindness, she was rewarded with a son. When, several years later, the boy died, the Shunammite woman rode about 30 kilometers 19 mi, and upon finding Elisha at Mount Carmel, she expressed her bitter grief, saying, "Did I ask for a son through my Lord? Did I not say, you must not lead me to a false hope?" Returning with her, the prophet prayed to Jehovah, and the boy was restored to life. 2 Chi 4. 8-37. Upon Elisha's warning her of a coming famine, the Shunammite woman, apparently now a widow, together with her household, took up living among the Philistines for 7 years. At the end of this time she returned, only to find her property confiscated. O textoi acute miritra longo, Shani 938 overlooks the valley of Jezreel. The place lies about 5 kilometers 3 mi of the abandoned village of Zarinteli Israel and some 8 kilometers 5 mi of the western end of Mount Gilboa. It was at Shunem that the Philistines encamped before the battle that resulted in the death of King Saul. 1 Sir 28. 4 From Shunem came the beautiful Apishag the Shunammite who cared for aged King David. 1 Chi 1. 3, 4, and later, the prophet Elisha often lodged in the home of a hospitable couple there. 2 Chi 4. 8. Shuni Shuenai, Shunites Shunites of belonging to Shuni. Shuni was the third named of Gad's 7 sons. He accompanied Jacob into Egypt in 1728 BCE, and when his own offspring expanded in numbers, they formed the tribal family of the Shunites. GE 46. 8, 16. New 26. 15. Shuphamites Shupham Middle.ites. Benjamite descendants of Shephupham, a variant spelling of Shuphim and Shephupain. New 26. 38, 39. 1ch7. 12. 8. 5. See Shuphim number 1. Shuphim. 1. A descendant of Benjamin, perhaps through Bela and Iri. 1ch7. 6, 7, 12. The introduction of Shuphim into the genealogies of Manasseh in 1 Chronicles 7. The 15th of May indicates some unusual intertribal relationship. In Genesis 46. 21 Shuphim is called Mapim, possibly because of the similarity of the letters in the ancient Hebrew alphabet represented in English by Shendem. The name is also spelled Shephupham, N, and it identifies the individual as founder of a Benjamite tribal family of Shuphamites. New 26. 39. 1ch8. 5. 2. A gatekeeper appointed to the W of the sanctuary. 1ch26. 16. Since the last 3 characters of his name in Hebrew Shat Middle.Pim are identical to the last 3 characters of the previous term Beit Ha Middle.Asia Middle.Pim, Scholars suspect that it is a digraph, an unintentional scribble repetition, therefore, in this verse, not the name of a person. Compare 1 ch 26. 10, 11. Shur Wall. A geographic name that has variously been said to be a city, a series of border forts, a region, or a mountain range. It is described as in front of Egypt, that is, on the E border of or to the E of Egypt. The context locates Shur in the MW portion of the Sinai Peninsula. GE 25. 18 After Israel crossed the Red Sea, Moses led them from the shores of the sea into the wilderness of Shur. X 15. 22. Earlier, it was at a fountain on the way to Shur that Jehovah's angel spoke to Abraham's Egyptian slave girl Hagar, who was likely fleeing back to Egypt. GE 16. 7 Later, Abraham moved from the region of Hebron. GE 13. 18 and took up dwelling between Kadesh Barnea, of Beersheba in the Negeb region and Shur, though also residing for a time at Gerar, a Philistine town considerably in of Kadesh. GE 20. 1 The rangings of the desert-dwelling Ishmaelites took them as far as Havlan Shur. GE 25. 18 King Saul successfully waged war against the Amalekites as far as Shur, but in David's time the Amalekites, along with the Geshurites and the Gerzites, was still inhabiting a similar area. 1 Sah 15. 7. 27. 8. Some of these texts seem to point more to a particular place than to just a general region. If this is the case, then the expression wilderness of Shur, used only once, might mean the wilderness in the proximity of a city or site named Shur. X 15. 22. Compare the reference to the wilderness of Damascus at 1 Chi 19. 15, or to that of Zip, 1 Sah 23. 14. The meaning of the name wall has prompted some to endeavor to identify Shur with the ancient defense wall along the Isthmus of Suez that Egyptian inscriptions indicate was built very early in that nation's history. Others think the term applies to a series of Egyptian fortresses along Egypt's eastern frontier facing the Sinai Peninsula. Exodus 15. 22, however, points to a location on the east side of the Red Sea, hence, to a place outside Egypt rather than within its boundaries. For this reason, the suggestion is also advanced that the name Shur Wall identifies O textoi acute muritra longo, Sickle 939, 15. 8. 14. 9. 12-15, and the place where Nehemiah served as cupbearer during the reign of Artaxerxes Longimanus, the son of Xerxes I. NE 1. 1. 2. 1. Sea Castle. Elam number 1. Persia, Persian capitals. There is evidence that Shushan also called Susa. As 4. 9 was the capital of ancient Elam. In the 7th century BCE King Assurbanipal of Assyria conquered Shushan and transported inhabitants of the city to Samaria. As 4. 9, 10 under Persian domination, Shushan was a royal city. In the 4th century BCE Shushan fell to Alexander the Great and eventually witnessed decline. Today only a mound of ruins occupies the site. Archaeologists have uncovered the ruins of a palace, thought to be the one begun by Persian King Darius I and completed by his son Xerxes I, believed to be Ahasuerus, the husband of Esther. The panels of colored glazed bricks in the stone capitals give some indication of its former glory. An inscription of Darius I about the erection of the palace reads, "This is the Hadish palace which at Susa I built." From afar its ornamentation was brought. Deep down the earth was dug, until rock bottom I reached. When the excavation was made, gravel was packed down, one part 60 feet, the other 30 feet in depth. On that gravel a palace I built. And that the earth was dug down and the gravel packed and the mud brick formed in molds, that the Babylonians did. The cedar timber was brought from a mountain named Lebanon. The Assyrians brought it to Babylon, and from Babylon the Carians and Ionians brought it to Susa. Teak wood was brought from Gandhara and from Campania. The gold which was used here was brought from Sardis and from Bactria. The stone, lapis lazuli and carnelian, was brought from Sogdiana. The turquoise was brought from Chorasmia. The silver and copper were brought from Egypt. The ornamentation with which the wall was adorned was brought from Ionia. The ivory was brought from Ethiopia, from India, and from Arachosia. The stone pillars were brought from a place named Abaradush in Elam. The artisans who dressed the stone were Ionians and Sudians. The goldsmiths who wrought the gold were Medes and Egyptians. Those who worked the inlays were Sudians and Egyptians. Those who worked the baked brick with figures were Babylonians. The men who adorned the wall were Medes and Egyptians. At Susa here a splendid work was ordered. Very splendid did it turn out. History of the Persian Empire, by A. T. Olmsted, 1948, p. 168. See Archaeology Persia. Shathela the Middle Dotla. 1. The son of Ephraim and forefather of the tribal family of Shathelites. 1 ch. 7. 20. New 26. 35-37 Shathela is not mentioned in the Masoretic text of Genesis 46. 20, but a form of his name is among the several names here added in the Greek Septuagint. 2. An Ephraimic descendant of number 1. 1 ch. 7. 20, 21. Shathelite Shuthel middle dot heights of belonging to Shathela. The family descendants of Shathela. Included among the registered ones in the tribe of Ephraim at the time of the second census in the wilderness. New 26. 35, 37. Siasia middle dot ha. One of the Nethinim whose descendants returned from Babylonian exile with Zerubbabel in 537 BCE is 2. 1, 2, 43, 44. Ne 7. 47. Sibakai Sibbi middle dot Kai. One of David's mighty men, a Hushaltite. 1 ch. 11. 26, 29 Sibakai, in a war with the Philistines at Gob, slew Sibai, one of the giant like Rephaim, thereby subduing the enemy. 2 Sa 21. 18. 1 ch. 20. For when David organized the monthly rotational service of the nation's forces, Sibakai was placed in charge of the 8th Division. 1 ch. 27. 1, 11 He is apparently called Mbernea 2 Samuel 23. 27. Sibboleth. See Shibboleth. Sibma. A town near the Jordan, taken by Israel from Amorite King Sihon and assigned to the Reubenites, who desired it because of surrounding pasturelands. Apparently it was also called a Sebam. New 32. 2-5, O textoi acute muritra longo, sickness 940 sickness. See diseases and treatment. Siddim, low plain of Siddim. A valley linked in scripture with the salt Dead Sea. GE 14. 3 There, in Abraham's day, the rebellious kings of Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, Zeboiim, and Zor battled with Elamite king Chedorlaomer and his 3 allies. Defeated, the kings of Sodom and Gomorrah fled, only to have some of their troops fall into the pits upon pits of bitumen that filled the area. GE 14. 4, 8-10. Some believe that the lower plain of Siddim is the bay-like section of the Dead Sea of the Sand Peninsula. They believe that it once was a fertile valley and was apparently later submerged, perhaps because of earthquake activity or because of topographical changes resulting from God's destruction of Sodom, Gomorrah, and the entire district. GE 19. 24, 25 From time to time, pieces of bituminous matter still rise to the surface of the shallow waters there. See Salt Sea. Sidon Sidonian Sea middle dot Dueni middle dot ends. Canaan's firstborn son Sidon was the progenitor of the Sidonians. The seaport town of Sidon was named after their forefather, and for many years it was the principal city of the Phoenicians, as the Greeks called the Sidonians. Today the city is known as Saida. A colony of Sidonians also settled about 35 kilometers 22 miles of Sidon and called the place Tyre. In time Tyre surpassed Sidon in many respects, but she never completely lost her identity as a Sidonian settlement. The king of Tyre was sometimes called the king of the Sidonians 1 Chi 16. 31, and frequently Tyre and Sidon are mentioned together in prophecy. J 25. 22. 27. 3. 47. 4. Joe 3. 4. Zech 9. 2 between the two cities was Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and where Elijah was fed by a widow during a prolonged famine. 1 Kai 17. 9. Bu 4. 25, 26. Originally Sidon was considered the end limit of the Canaanite nations. GE 10. 19 After Joshua's conquest of the kings of northern Canaan who has been pursued as far and as populous Sidon, the land was divided among the 9.5 tribes that had as yet received no allotment. At that time land under Sidon's control was yet remaining to be taken. Jos 11. 8. 13. 2, 6, 7. New 32. 33 Asher received the coastal plains immediately east of Sidon, and as has been prophesied, Zebulun's territory lay with his remote side toward Sidon, that is, in the end part of the promised land. Jos 19. 24, 28. GE 49. 13 The Asherites, however, instead of driving the Sidonians out of their God-assigned territory, were content to settle down among them. JG 1. 31, 32. 3. 1, 3 During the period of the Judges, the tribe of Dan annexed Laish, possibly a Sidonian colony, and renamed it Dan. The conquest was accomplished with apparent ease, for the people were quiet and unsuspecting, hence unprepared for the attack. JG 18. 7, 27-29 Sidon is also mentioned in connection with the census taken in David's day. 2 24. 6. A port city favored with two of the few harbors on the Phoenician coast, Sidon became a great trading center where overland caravans met and exchanged their wares for goods brought in vessels plying the shipping lanes of the Mediterranean. Among the Sidonians were wealthy merchants, skilled sailors, and hardy rowers. Issa 23. 2. Compares 27. 8, 9. Sidonians were also famous for their craftsmanship in the manufacture of glass and in their weaving and dyeing of cloth. They were also noted for their ability as loggers and lumbermen. 1 Kai 5. 6. 1 Ch 22. 4. S 3. 7. Sidonian religion and its consequence. Religiously, the Sidonians were depraved. Lewd sex orgies in connection with the goddess Ashtaroth were a prominent part of their worship. The Israelites, allowing the Sidonians to remain among them, were eventually ensnared into worshipping their false gods. JG 10. 6, 7, 11-13 Some of the foreign wives that Solomon married were Sidonians, and these caused the king to go after the disgusting fertility goddess Ashtaroth. O textoi acute muritra longo, sign 941 Majority Jews or proselytes. Mr. 3. 7, 8. Lu 6. 17 On his first trip to Rome as a prisoner, Paul was permitted to visit with the brothers in Sidon. Act 27. 1, 3. For reasons not stated by history, Herod Agrippa I was in a fighting mood against the Sidonians, who were supplied with food from the king. When a day was set for reconciling matters and the Sidonians were applauding Herod as speaking with a god's voice, and not a man's, Jehovah's angel struck him so that he was soon eaten up with worms. Act 12. 20-23. Sign. An object, act, situation, or unusual display that has significance as an indicator of something else, present or future. The sign Heb. Oath. Gr. Smiddle. Might be an evidence of authenticity or of authority, a warning of danger, or an indicator as to the wise course to follow. Among the many signs that Jehovah has provided for human guidance, the first mentioned as such are the heavenly luminaries, the sun and the moon. G1. 14 They are time indicators as well as visible signs of God's existence and qualities. PS 19. 1-4. Row 1. 19, 20 Evidently, because of looking to these luminaries as well as to the stars for omens, as by astrology, the nations have been struck with terror, as stated at Jeremiah 10. 2. Purposes of signs. Jehovah gave signs as an assurance of truthfulness and dependability of his words. Jer 44. 29. 1 2. 31-34. 10. 7, 9. 2 Kai 20. 8-11 They demonstrated God's backing of Moses or other servants. X 3. 11, 12. Compare JG 6. 17, 20-22, of an Apostle 2 Co 12. 12, of the Christian Congregation 1 Co 14. 22. Signs were not essential to prove God's backing, as is seen in the case of John the Baptizer. Joe 10. 41. Mount 11. 9-11 Also, a false prophet might perform a sign, but he could be identified as false by the means Jehovah provided. The 13. 1-5. 18. 20-22. Isla 44. 25. Mr. 13. 22. 2th2. 9. Re 13. 13, 14. 19. 20. Certain signs are reminders, remembrances, memorials. GE 9. 12-14. 17. 11. Row 4. 11 The Sabbaths and the Passover constituted memorial signs for the Jews. X 13. 3-9. 31. 13. S 20. 12, 20 A sign of a literal or symbolic nature could serve as an identification. New 2. 2. X 12. 13. A sign demanded of Jesus. During Jesus' ministry he performed numerous signs that helped many to believe in him. Joe 2. 23 But the signs did not produce faith in hard-hearted ones. Lu 2. 34. Joe 11. 47, 53. 12. 37. Compare New 14. 11, 22. When on 2 occasions religious leaders asked Jesus to display to them a sign from heaven, they likely were demanding that he perform, as proof that he was the Messiah, the sign foretold at Daniel 7. 13, 14, namely, the Son of Man appearing with the clouds of the heavens to take his kingdom power. But it was not God's time for that prophecy to be fulfilled, and Christ would not perform a showy display merely to gratify their selfish demand. Mount 12. 38. 16. 1 Rather, he told them that the only sign that would be given them was the sign of Jonah the prophet. Mount 12. 39-41. 16. For after about 3 days in the belly of a huge fish, Jonah had gone and preached to Nineveh. Jonah thereby became a sign to the capital of Assyria. Jesus' generation had the sign of Jonah when Christ spent parts of 3 days in the grave and was resurrected, after which his disciples proclaimed the evidence of that event. In this, Christ was a sign to that generation, but even that did not convince most of the Jews. Lu 11. 30. 1 Co 1. 22. Sign of Christ's presence. Shortly before Jesus' death his apostles asked him, "What will be the sign of your presence and of the conclusion of the system of things?" Mount 24. 3. Mr. 13. 4. Lu 21. 7 There were distinct differences between this question and the requests for a sign that the religious leaders had made. While right there, able to see him and his works, those leaders would not accept him as Messiah and King designate. Joe 19. 15 Once they asked for a sign to tempt him. Lu 11. 16. Also o texto e acute miritra longo, signal 942 Sign of the Son of Man. On that same occasion Jesus said to his disciples, "And then the sign of the Son of Man will appear in heaven, and then all the tribes of the earth will beat themselves in lamentation, and they will see the Son of Man coming on the clouds of heaven with power and great glory." Mount 24. 30. Lu 21. 27 Just before this comment he had spoken of the prophet Daniel. Mount 24. 15. Da 9. 27. 11. 31 And from the expression Jesus he used it is evident that he was now referring back to Daniel 7. 13, 14, where the vision depicted with the clouds of the heavens someone like a son of man gaining access to the Ancient of Days and receiving a kingdom that will not be brought to ruin. This linked the sign of the Son of Man with the time when Jesus would be exercising kingdom power. Jesus applied the expression Son of Man and the prophecy at Daniel 7:13-14 to himself. Mount 26. 63, 64. Mr. 14. 61, 62. About 96 CE, 26 years after the destruction of Jerusalem, John wrote about things that would take place in the future, and he saw in vision Jesus Christ coming with the clouds, and every eye will see him, and those who pierced him. Re 1:7. Hence, both this statement about something that was to take place after 96 CE and what Christ said about the sign of the Son of Man refer to Jesus as coming in the clouds and as being seen by all people. See cloud. It should be noted, however, that while the Greek verb homidal.rao, see, used at Matthew 24:30 and Revelation 1:7, can mean literally to see an object, behold, it can also be used metaphorically, of mental sight, to discern, perceive. A Greek-English lexicon, by H. Little and R. Scott, revised by H. Jones, 1968, p. 1245, col. 1. Free comparison of miracles, portents, and signs. See miracles. Portent. Signal. The Hebrew word s appears to denote a stationary pole or stake occupying an elevated site. It is used both literally and figuratively. Hence, it does not denote a signal for sending messages, such as a smoke signal JG20, 38, 40 or a fire signal J6. 1, for which other Hebrew words are used. Rather, such a pole could serve as a rallying point to which people or armies could assemble themselves. Issa 5. 26. 13. 2. 18. 3. 30. 17. 31. 9. J4. 6. 21. 50. 2. 51. 12. 27. Compare PS 60. 4. FTN. For example, when the Israelites on one occasion complained about manna and the lack of water, Jehovah punished them by sending poisonous serpents among them. After the Israelites manifested repentance, Jehovah instructed Moses to fashion a serpent and to place it upon a signal pole nes. Moses at once made a serpent of copper and placed it upon the signal pole. And it did occur that if a serpent had bitten a man and he gazed at the copper serpent, he then kept alive. New 21. 5-9 Evidently this signal pole stood in a fixed location and was doubtless on an elevated place so that it was visible to the Israelites who had been bitten by serpents. Similarly, in 537 BCE Jerusalem, whose rebuilding had been foretold, became the signal that beckoned the Jewish remnant to leave the lands to which they had been dispersed and to return to the then desolated Jerusalem to rebuild the temple. Issa 11. 11, 12. Compare Issa 49. 22. 62. 10, 11. The prophecy, however, is not limited to this 6th century application. Isaiah 11. 10 reads, "And it must occur in that day that there will be the root of Jesse that will be standing up as a signal for the peoples." The Apostle Paul applied these words to Christ Jesus, the one who would rule nations. Row 15. 8, 12 Also, Jesus spoke of himself as the root of David the son of Jesse. Re 22. 16 Accordingly, the signal is Christ Jesus as reigning king standing on heavenly Mount Zion. Compare Heb 12. 22. Re 14. 1. Signature. A person's identifying mark. The word signature is a translation of the Hebrew word Tor, the name of the last letter of the Hebrew O text Toi Akut Muritra Longo, Siloam 943 Anan, and apparently he dominated Midian, for the chieftains of Midian are called the Dukes of Sihon. New 21. 26-30. Jos 13. 21 When Israel sent messengers asking Sihon's permission to pass through his kingdom on the king's road and promising not to steal anything from the Amorites, Sihon denied permission and gathered his army to block Israel. At Jahaz he was defeated and killed. New 21. 21-24. De 1. 3, 4. 2. 24-35. 3. 2, 6. The significance of Israel's victory over Sihon can be seen from the fact that it is mentioned many times in Israelite history, alongside the defeat of the Egyptians at the Red Sea. Moses, Jotham, a psalmist, and the post-exilic Levites sometimes use it as an encouraging example of Jehovah's victories in behalf of his faithful people. New 21. 34. De 31. 4. JG 11. 19-22. NE 9. 5, 22. PS 135. 9-12. 136. 18, 19 reports of it prompted Rahab and the Gibeonites to make peace with Israel. Jos 2. 10. 9. 9, 10 Sihon's land was divided among the tribes of Reuben and Gad. New 21. 25, 31, 32. De 29. 7, 8. Jos 13. 8-10, 15-28. Silas Silas, Silvanus Sil Middle. Venus from Lat. Meaning forest. Woods. A leading member of the first-century Christian congregation in Jerusalem, a prophet, and a companion of Paul on his second missionary journey. He was apparently a Roman citizen. Act 15. 22, 26, 27, 32, 40. 16. 19, 25, 37, 38. Likely the name Silvanus, found in the letters of Paul and Peter, was the Latinized form of the Greek name Silas, used by Luke in Acts. The congregation at Jerusalem chose Silas to accompany Barnabas and Paul back to Antioch, Syria, to carry to the congregation there the decision regarding circumcision. Act 15. 22, 30-32. Whether Silas remained in the vicinity of Antioch or returned to Jerusalem is uncertain. Some manuscripts contain Acts 15. 34, which reads, "But it seemed good to Silas to remain there further." But the most prominent manuscripts omit this verse. CNWFTN. At any rate, Silas was in Antioch at the start of Paul's second missionary tour. Beginning there, he and Paul traveled N&W through Syria, then Cilicia and other regions of Asia Minor. Timothy joined them at Lystra and Luke at Troas. Being invited into Macedonia in a dream given to Paul, they first stayed in Philippi. In the marketplace there, Silas and Paul were beaten with rods by order of the civil magistrates and were put in prison stocks, but during the night, while they were praying and singing songs, an earthquake loosened their prison bonds and the prison doors were opened. The jailer was much frightened and, listening to Paul and Silas, became a Christian, caring for their injuries suffered from the beating. Act 15. 41. 16. 40. Their ministry found a success in Thessalonica and Berea, where Silas and Timothy remained behind temporarily while Paul went on to Athens and Corinth. Act 17. 1, 10, 14-16. 18. 1 When Silas and Timothy finally caught up with Paul in Corinth, they continued to assist Paul. While there they joined with Paul in writing the two letters to the Thessalonians. 1th1. 1. 2th1. 1 Silas is not mentioned again in the historical narrative of Paul's travels. Some years later, around 62-64 CE, Peter wrote his first letter from Babylon through Silvanus, evidently meaning that Silvanus acted as Peter's secretary. He was there described as a faithful brother, and he was likely the Silvanus earlier associated with Paul. 1 Pe 5. 12. Silk. The strongest of natural fibers, used since Bible times to make beautiful, lightweight cloth. Silk is produced by caterpillars of various species, and especially by the Chinese silkworm, which feeds on mulberry leaves and emits a fluid that hardens into fine threads to form a cocoon. Silken fabric, considered by archaeologists to have been woven over 2,000 years ago, has been found in tombs of a Phoenician cemetery near Subrata, Libya. Silkworm culture appears to have had its start in China. Textoy acute Muritra longo. Sylvanus 944 called the Pool of Siloam, that archaeologists believe to be this pool. It is trapezoidal in shape, with steps on at least 3 sides. One side is 70 meters, 225 feet long, but the pool is not yet excavated in its entirety. For the Siloam inscription, see Hezekiah. Also picture, Volume 1, p. 960. In the days of Jesus' earthly ministry, evidently it was common knowledge that the tower in Siloam had collapsed, killing 18 persons. It has been suggested that this tower was situated on the Ophel Ridge, but its actual location in Jerusalem is unknown. Lu 13. 4. Sylvanus. See Silas, Sylvanus. Silver. A valuable white metallic element that takes a high polish. Since silver is seldom found in the native state, the base ore has to be smelted and purified to release the silver and separate it from the gangue, dross, and scummy foreign matter, as well as to free it from other metals such as lead. PS 12. 6. PR 27. 21. S 22. 20-22. Mal 3. 3 at times. The Hebrew term for silver ke-sif is rendered money, and the Greek term for silver r-giri-on is rendered silver money or silver pieces. GE 17. 12, FTN. Mount 25. 18. 26. 15. See money. Refined silver had 2 principal uses. One, it was used as a measure of wealth and a medium of exchange. Abraham, using this medium of exchange, bought a family burial plot. GE 13. 2. 23. 15-18 payment was made by weight, since coinage was not devised until centuries later. 2 objects of beauty and ornamentation were fashioned of this metal from the days of the patriarchs. GE 24. 53. 44. 2. X11. 2. 12. 35 silver was employed for Israel's 2 trumpets new 10. 2. In the construction of the tabernacle X26. 19, 21, 25, 32. 27. 10, 11, 17, and in Solomon's temple 1ch28. 15-17. It was also used in making idols. X20. 23. Ho 13. 2. Hab 2. 19. Act 19. 24. Silver was treasured by all nations of the past. 2 8. 10, 11. 2ch 9. 14. Under Solomon's rule, not only silver but also gold became so abundant in Jerusalem that silver was counted as nothing at all, like the stones. 1 Chi 10. 21, 27. 2ch 9. 20. Compared R2. 32. Once every 3 years ships brought cargoes of silver from Tarshish, apparently Spain, which is still a producer of silver. 1 Chi 10. 22. 2ch 9. 21. Ch 10. 9. As 27. 12. In contrast with the transient value of silver, and to be more highly estimated, are the wisdom, discipline, and understanding that come from Jehovah. PR 3. 13, 14. 8. 10, 19. 16. 16 also, the scriptures use silver in a number of symbolic senses. EC 12. 6. Issa 60. 17. Da 2. 32. 1 Co 3. 12. Psi means semi-middle dot on hearing. 1. The second of Jacob's 12 sons. So named because, as his mother Leah said, Jehovah has listened, in that I was hated, and so he gave me also this one. GE 29. 32, 33. 35. 23-26. 48. 5. X1. 1-4. 1ch2. 1, 2. When his father Jacob was encamped near Shechem, Simeon, together with his next younger brother Levi, displayed a vengeful anger that was unreasonably harsh and cruel. Arbitrarily, without their father's knowledge or consent, they set about avenging the honor of their younger sister Dinah by slaughtering the Shechemites, bringing ostracism upon Jacob's whole family. GE 34. 1-31. Simeon was later involved in wrongdoing when he and his brothers planned to kill Joseph. GE 37. 12-28, 36. Whether Simeon, as second oldest, was or was not the ringleader in this plot on Joseph's life is not stated. Years later, when Joseph as food administrator of Egypt was testing out his brothers, Simeon was selected by Joseph to be bound and imprisoned until the other brothers brought Benjamin down to Egypt. GE 42. 14-24, 34-36. 43. 15, 23. Shortly before Jacob's death, when blessing his sons, Jacob recalled with disapproval the violence of Simeon and Levi in connection with the Shechemites many years earlier, saying, "Instruments of violence are their slaughter weapons. Into their intimate group do not come, O my soul." With their congregation O textoi acute miritra longo. Toward the end of the 1st century CE, the resurrected Jesus Christ in a very touching way showed keen interest in his anointed followers still on earth. How? By directing the aged apostle John to write letters to the 7 congregations that were in the district of Asia. Re 1. 1-4. Those letters contained much needed encouragement, counsel, and warning. Today, only ruins are found on the sites of most of the cities where those congregations were located. Yet, these give evidence that what was written deals with real places, actual situations, and people who truly lived. Of even greater interest, however, is the fact that these messages pointed to conditions that would exist at a future time in the Christian congregation. Congregations of Revelation. Ruins of Ephesus. Some Christians in this materialistic city lost the love for Jehovah that they had at first reconstructed altar to Zeus from Pergamum. Christians in Pergamum were tested in regard to giving worship exclusively to Jehovah. 945. Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Smyrna, Philadelphia, Ephesus, Laodicea, Patmos, Smyrna now called Izmir. Early Christians here, though thrown into prison, were urged not to be afraid. Those in Philadelphia at the head of a long valley that led west to Smyrna, though they had already endured, were also urged to keep holding fast what they had Thyatira now called Akissa, columns and arches of a colonnaded street. Some early Christians in Thyatira, although sharing in good works, foolishly got involved in immoral conduct. Sardis, ruins of the Temple of Artemis. Not all Christians here were truly alive spiritually. Laodicea. Christians in this city were approved for being lukewarm, like the water that reached the city through its aqueduct. Jerusalem. Once the center of true worship of Jehovah God, but no longer the city bearing God's name. Jerusalem lost its privileged position after it apostatized from the teachings of God's word and rejected the Messiah, Jesus. Luke 13. 34, 35. To this day, however, Jerusalem is of keen interest to lovers of the Bible, because events of universal importance took place there. An aerial view of the city from the south such as the one on this page shows features of Jerusalem in relation to one another. Mount Moriah, where the temple was located, is in the background. In the foreground is Mount Zion, bounded by the torrent valley of Kidron on the east and the Tyropian valley on the west. The city of David was built on Mount Zion. Standing on the Mount of Olives to the east of Jerusalem, a person can look across the Kidron Valley and see the site where the temple once stood. Now it is dominated by a Muslim shrine known as the Dome of the Rock. Jesus was sitting on the Mount of Olives with the temple in view when he gave his famous prophecy about the conclusion of the system of things. Mr. 13. 3. Mount 24. 3. In and around Jerusalem today 947, the temple site is seen from the Mount of Olives. In the foreground are the burial places of Jews who believed that someday the Messiah would appear here. The Holy Land model in Jerusalem is a model of what many believe represents the appearance of 1st century Jerusalem. The Garden Tomb right and the Church of the Holy Sepulchre below, 1st century tombs inside. Each is claimed by some to be the site of Jesus' burial. Damascus Gate, Jerusalem Street seen in the old part of Jerusalem. The Pool of Siloam, fed by the spring of Gihon through Hezekiah's tunnel. The Valley of Hinnom, which lay to the south